I am the outreach librarian and curator in special collections. I am really very pleased about this occasion to show these wonderful Armenian manuscripts we have in our collections, plus also early printed books. I don't know if you had the opportunity to get one of these handouts. Actually, I thought that I was going to talk just standing by the books, so I would be pointing out, some of the features. The manuscripts are really outstanding. I am particularly in love with Michigan manuscript 141, the 12th century manuscript, and despite of the fact that I don't know Armenian, I think that you could probably see how that manuscript is connected to a Byzantine tradition. There are three manuscripts with the Gospels, the four Gospels, and most of them, they include full-page illuminations with the evangelist, and they actually represent several historical moments of the transmission of the Bible in Armenian culture. And so I included some very brief cataloging information. However, I really need your expertise. I think this is a very good moment for a curator to get business cards from you guys, because we are still working on the artifacts. We would be very pleased if you could actually tell us something we don't know yet and include it in these catalog descriptions. Particularly because we are organizing for this coming January a big exhibit called Sacred Hands. It's going to be an exhibit about the three main monotheistic faiths. We will have manuscripts in Latin, Greek, Coptic, Armenian, Arabic, and so this would be an opportunity to improve what we have of our Armenian manuscript collections. If you contact me and are interested in somehow participating in this project, also I would like to propose to use your language skills. I am also involved in a project to record languages, to include these languages, these recordings, when you visit the actual exhibit. We already have Latin, Greek, Hebrew, and Arabic recorded. If you know how to recite classical Armenian, contact me so I could actually include this recording along with the manuscript. For instance, we are preparing also an online version of the exhibit. So, I am taking advantage of this event for my own profit as well. So, apart from the manuscripts, we have the second part is four early printed books ranging from the 17th to the 19th century. I have already learned quite a lot by talking to you. The reason why I selected these titles, I am fascinated about Armenian culture, Armenian scholars as translators. How they are translating from the Latin, from the Greek, sometimes keeping the tradition of the fathers of the church going, because the original Greek or the original Syriac was lost. So you have a few examples of that in this very small exhibit. So that's very much what I wanted to say. I will be now with the manuscripts, and I will be happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Good afternoon. There isn't really much left for me to say because both the modern and earlier periods were covered. But this is a magnificent opportunity to tell you something about the Armenian collection. when I first came here, we had about 1,500 titles. Then we, in due course, expanded the collection by buying private collections. I remember buying a collection from Istanbul, 4,500 pieces, of which 1,200 were Ottoman books. The rest, very rare Constantinople imprints, which I doubt that other collections have. We also bought a collection, I think it was Vahe Vahyan's, this poet from Lebanon. The poor man never got paid for it because there was something went wrong as the money was transferred to Beirut. And this money came to us from the state of Michigan. At the time I was told that no one should know about this, but that was about 15 years ago, so I think I'm safe if I say that stealthily a senator or someone talked to the governor or someone, I don't know, and we got $50,000, which we were supposed to spend very carefully and telling no one about it. And then we also made purchases by, I think, Kersam Aharonian's, some of his books, etc. And this momentum continues. This is wonderful. Now we have about 15,000 titles. Of course, many of them are multi-volume. And ours ranks up there with the Library of Congress, UCLA, and Harvard. I think these four are the best collections in the country. It's a very good working collection. We do have gaps, but thanks to the efforts of our librarians and curators, these gaps are being filled, and the books are being used, and that's what they are there for. As to the actual books on exhibit, they are, as was mentioned, they're a medley of books, most of them translations, indicative of the earlier period of printing. I was to deliver a paper at a conference on printing and books, which eventually I didn't attend, and I had started my research. It wasn't completed when I realized that I wouldn't be able to go. And the topic was the impact of printing on early Armenian printing, early Armenian letters, actually. Early Armenian printing on Armenian letters. Because, as you may have observed, the impact was not great initially. Printing impact was not great on Armenian letters initially. And I was going to compare this to the same phenomenon in Greek and Arabic. Greek, because of its importance in classical Greek, and then, of course, religious studies, New Testament Greek, etc. Arabic, because it was we're talking about 16th century, 15th century, so it was the language of the foe, Islam, that of the Quran. And the idea was, as I said, to compare the impact printing had on all these three letters. I had some original, initial thoughts. I'll just toss them out for your consideration. The early Armenian books are collections or religious books. The reason being, I think, that this idea of individual authorship was not yet really common. In other words, there were no writers who would think of publishing their works. So those who published books, they either published them for religious purposes, or they had collections for larger consumption, so to speak. Things will change, of course, later on in the 18th century. And after such observations, and I don't really remember now because I thought I would be talking about something else, I was going to discuss some of the early works that had an enormous impact on Armenian thought in the course of time, especially in the 18th century, singling out certain books like Chamchian's History, etc., the impact of which has been great. And going back to Greek, Greek was very important, and more Greek books were published initially due to the importance of Greek language to the classical world and also to Christianity, as the new Koine, the New Testament Greek being the language of the New Testament. Arabic, as I said, also as the language of the four. And in Rome, basically, the Arabic books that were published there were of religious content, basically propaganda, anti-Muslim propaganda. And but there was no such problem with Greek. But of course, the texts had to be reinstated, etc. It would have been a fascinating thing, but it's unfinished and it's lying somewhere. Maybe someday I'll take it up. One more observation about printing, Armenian, as I said, I was going to concentrate on the activities of the Mkhitrists, why and how they put this to good use for their own purposes, but also as contribution to Armenian culture, and move on, of course, in two stages, from manuscripts to printing, and then from initial religious printings or very sort of limited topics. As you can see, we have translations basically to more valid or more widely respected or needed things that the Mkhitrists did. And the impact these books, printed by the Mkhitrists, had on Armenian letters by studying a few examples. I think this is all I have to say. Some of the books are indicative of certain circumstances at the time. For instance, the English Armenian dictionary. There was some interest when Lord Byron was in Venice, etc., and they were interested in publishing printed, that is to say, dictionaries, etc. And the translations, of course, are for religious purposes. And one more point, Amsterdam acquires, even though the first Armenian book was printed in Venice, Amsterdam acquires a very important position in the history of Armenian printing because the so-called heretical Dutch allowed the printing of the Armenian Bible, 1666, 1668. It took 2 years. And also for books that were of non-religious content that were published in Amsterdam. So if Venice is the birthplace of Armenian printing, Amsterdam is almost as important in that respect. Well, I thank our librarians, curators, for their efforts to enlarge this collection, Armenian collection. We have a wonderful one, and I assure you it will be put to good use. Thank you.